Hey everyone, welcome to Kingdom Builder TV. I'm your host, Jay Heilman. Thank you so much for stopping by today. So my guest today is someone who's very familiar in the music world in both mainstream and Christian music. And for the past 40 plus years, he has been a staple, both behind the microphone, singing, and with his brother and producing. And I'd like to welcome my good friend, John Elefante, to the show. John, how are you doing today, brother?
Doing good. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to get you on Zoom here. I know the last time that you and I interviewed, it was over the phone, and since then, you and I have texted back and forth and been kind of keeping up with that. So glad to finally get you back on here, man. And
Yeah.
something that you and I didn't get a chance to talk about a couple years ago, but you're still releasing music. Your last
Mhm.
record was called The Amazing Grace, and
Mhm.
I got a chance to hear some early cuts of that record, including the song Stronger Now. Take us back a couple years with that record and tell us about the record. If you have anything that you're working on now.
You know what? It was the record that wasn't supposed to be. I think what forced the hand of making that record was the pandemic. Because I'll never forget, I was doing a show in Palm Desert, California, and it was like, everybody woke up one day and it was like, everybody go home.
Mm.
So we almost didn't get our flight back to Nashville, but we did. We made it, and I think 2 days later they locked everybody down, and so we were just stuck here. And it was a great time for me to make a record, and I had help from a friend that from Scottsdale that helped me out, a guy named Frank Boxberger, who's become a very dear friend. And he said, "Come on, man, why don't you do a record?" He just kept pushing me and pushing me, and he had a couple of song ideas, and I had some song ideas, and we collaborated somewhat, and that's when the record was born. We call it the COVID record, even though that gives it a bad connotation, but it was made when everybody was locked down.
Well, and I was kind of surprised because when I had talked, and I don't remember, I think it was either 2017 or 2018 when we'd done our last interview. So it's been about 6 years that you and I have just been texting back and forth on phone between that interview and now. But I remember talking to you about your 2013 record, On My Way to the Sun. And I'm like, when are we going to hear some more music from John?
Yeah,
And you had sent me a couple tracks, which I think were initially supposed to be just one-off tracks. And then that record just came up. One day you text me, it's like, hey, I've decided to put this out on a record. So I'm like, that's awesome. Finally get to hear a whole new record. And I know you follow
yeah.
the
It,
fan
it just
pages.
it just kept growing like a I don't want to say like a weed, but it just kept growing and growing and growing. We'd have two songs, three songs. I got an idea for a fourth song, a fifth song. And just the thing just kept growing until we had a whole record.
Yeah, so one thing that I thought's really cool is between all of this, the recording of your music and doing production work on others' music. One thing that you've been a huge part of that I find very much enjoyable to listen to because I'm a huge fan of classic rock, and you coming from the band Kansas in the early '80s, one of the projects that you are a part of that you go and do every once in a while is the Jay Sekulow band. And you and I were talking
I just did one the other
recently.
night, 2 nights
Yeah, I
ago.
was I was gonna say, what's next with you and Jay Sekulow band? When are we gonna see some more stuff from that?
Keep your eyes open the next week. I think you'll see something.
Yeah, so
Um,
so taking back to Jay Sekulow, how did you meet him and get involved with that band? I know that he's like more into like politics and stuff like that, but is a great musician
you know what?
himself.
Those guys used to, before Jay built his new building, they used to get together in his radio studio. When his radio show was done, and just sometimes those things can be pretty high pressure. And he had a couple of employees that worked for him, and they used to get together and just jam in his radio studio. And John Schlitz started coming around. He became friends with some of the guys, and they got to be friends with Jay. And one day, out of the blue, John Schlitz called me and he said, "John, would you like to come down and jam with us, man?" And Jay Sekulow, I mean, would you be offended? I said, "No, I wouldn't be offended." So I said, okay, I'll come down. I think it was on a Friday. I'll come down, and I walked in and we just started jamming. You know, it's like, okay, this is fun. And then the question arose, hey, can we get together in another part of the facility that I think is more suited for what we're doing here? And that's when we started shooting video. It really just really progressed into, I think everything we do now in totality gets millions of views.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I remember the first video I saw was the Argent cover that you guys did of Hold Your Head Up. And I'm like, wow, I really like this. And then immediately I looked at this video. I'm like, I recognize a lot of people in this video. I recognize you. I'm like, oh wow, that's John Schlitt from Petra. Got Jay Sekula, of course. And it's just a cool experience, you know, growing up listening to that classic rock what it's called classic rock now. A lot of that stuff, you know, I remember listening to in the 80s when it was brand new on the radio, but now it's classic rock. But I love it, man.
Then we added Mark Townsend that was with DC Talk.
Yeah.
And he's our kind of our technical advisor, man. That guy really works his tail off. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into that. But the studio where we do everything at Jay's facility is just, it's a dream, man. It's all the right gear. I mean, all the right stuff. I mean, all the right lighting, and it's just so great to do it there. It's kind of like live at Daryl's house, you know.
Yeah, yeah, Paul Notes. Yeah, I was looking at the studio. I'm like, man, he's like spared no expense when it comes to that studio. I mean, there's so much in there.
He's really into it, man. It's not just a passing hobby. I mean, he's really into it.
yeah.
I mean, Jay is really into music. I mean, he spent a lot of time going when he was in Georgia in law school. I think he went to Emory. He might have done his uh, he might have studied at Emory University. And wait a minute, my cat's trying to come in.
I've got a cat that does that here that I can actually open doors. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah, if he works hard enough, he'll get in. No, but Jay was would spend all his spare time, you know, with his guitar learning, you know, Leonard Skinner and you know all that Southern rock stuff. And you know, I wanted to mention to you also because I want to give my friend Kerry Livern a shout out that I sang 2 songs on his newest solo record.
That was gonna be my other question is that, you know, I know that, you know, you and Carrie did work on the Vinyl Confessions and Drastic Measures record back in the early 80s. And I know you guys are still friends and I got to hear those tracks and that was amazing. It's great to see Carrie is still doing music. Even though he's not in Kansas any longer, but still great. So what was that experience? I mean, you worked with him in the early 80s, you worked with him over the years, and then more recently you did these vocals in these 2 songs from him. I mean, what was it like working with him now?
And I also played the voice of the vocal of Lazarus on his cantata record.
Yeah.
Now those were only like a minute and a half long, and he would send me the tracks and basically tell me what he wanted. He'd put down a scratch vocal, and I would take it from there and just kind of mold it into my own thing. And Kerry very seldom said, "Oh, I don't like it. Try something else." I mean, we just always mesh. You know, it's. I think I know what he's wanting. You know.
Well, you know, but you and I were talking recently about vocal technique. You know, I've played guitar for 27 years now, and I also sing, but nowhere near the caliber that you do. And I've always been curious, like, you know, you've got the high range voice for a male singer. And, you know, I guess my question is, how do you keep up with that? I mean, how difficult is it to be able to, because a lot of people now that have been singing for 50 years, a lot of them can't sing now. And you've managed to take care of your voice, you've managed to do all of this vocal work over the years and still sound much like you did 40 years ago. I mean, how do you do that, and how do you keep your voice in pristine shape?
Well, I think I told you on another interview we did. I had some operatic training, and just because you have operatic training doesn't mean you're not getting. Operatic training is the best, in my opinion, the best vocal training you can get because you can hear. You know, you can listen to you can listen to guys in their 80s still, still singing, way up there. And you're thinking, how are they doing this? It's because their
Hmm.
technique is, they're doing it right. They're singing correctly. And if you sing correctly, there's no reason that your voice should diminish. I sound a little diminished now because I was up till 4:30 in the morning. But I've seen guys that just beat the living daylights out of their voice. It's almost like putting your hand on the table and getting a hammer and just going bam, bam,
Hmm.
bam for years, and they really tighten up and squeeze like that, and you'll do damage after a while. Somebody told me recently that Bon Jovi was having a lot of problems, and
Yeah.
it's probably just from beating himself up for so many years,
Yeah.
But I think if he had some operatic training, I don't know if he has or not. I mean, but I think if he went in and had some, it would take him a while. He'd probably have to stop singing, I would say, for at least 6 months, because
Oh,
if
Bon Jovi's done. Bon Jovi's done. He actually announced last week that he's done. I was talking to another guest, Mason Dixon, who's a legend down here in Tampa radio, and he was telling me that Bon Jovi's he's done because of the damage that he's done to his vocals. I think it's irreparable at this point.
he must have, I mean, surgery can remove nodes if he has nodes, but
Yeah, I know that I had bought my mom tickets. My mom's a huge Bon Jovi fan. I bought her tickets to his tour last year, and my mom's not musically inclined like me, so she doesn't hear people singing out of tune, off key, all that kind of stuff. I do, but she doesn't. And when after she went to the concert, she said I left halfway during the show because it was unbearable, and
really,
that's just unfortunate because the
he
guy's such a
he
talent.
could reverse that. He could reverse that.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
maybe he just doesn't want to put in the effort, and maybe he's been doing it a long time. The guy, I mean, since
yes.
he was a teenager, right?
Well, yeah, and I was telling you that I've got a high register voice too, but I couldn't do it for a whole show. I could do it for like maybe two or three songs, and I just think that that's amazing that as long as you've been doing this, you're still able to do it and sound good. I mean, there's very few people that have done it as long as you have that still have that vocal now that still sounds good. I think I was telling you last time I talked to you, Michael Sweet from Striper is a good example of somebody that came out of that era who sounds just as good now. John Schlitt, Petra. I mean,
Yeah.
there's still a couple of them that sound
I'll
really
tell you,
good.
a guy that blows my mind is Mickey Thomas. That guy sings exactly like he did when he was with Starship.
Oh yeah, yeah. He
He's
was down here
gosh,
recently. I wanted to see him, but didn't get a chance to see him. But yeah, yeah. So you were talking about you've won many awards over your career, been nominated for Dove Awards, all that kind of good stuff. But you mentioned that an Emmy. Tell us about that.
yeah. A friend called me and he said he's doing a rendition of "People Get Ready." There's a train a coming, that song.
Hmm.
And he started getting all these, I guess you'd call them, just big name people on there. Stevie Wonder, Skip Martin from Kool and the Gang, and I can't remember the rest of the artists. There's so many on there. And he asked me to sing a little bit on it. And next thing I knew, he said, "John, we just won an Emmy." I guess they had something to do with daytime TV.
Mm.
He said the song just pulled in an Emmy, and I'm going to send you one, and it's sitting right over there. So
So you have an
it's
Emmy
kind
Award,
of,
man.
yeah.
That's all. Can we see it? Can you show it to me? I want to see it.
Yeah, hang on. I'll go get it. Hang on.
Yeah, let's see it. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I could see it. That's so cool.
It's very bright.
So Grammys and Dove Awards, I mean that comes into play in your line of work. But I mean, you've ever thought you'd get one of
No,
those?
I never imagined an Emmy Award. I mean, it's not a lot of musicians have Emmy Awards. In
Yeah.
fact, Stevie Wonder, he was surprised he had never won an Emmy Award. So this
Now
was his first as well.
that's surprising considering as much music as he's had in TV and movies. I'm actually
I know.
I noticed behind you in the background, you've got a lot of gold and platinum records on your walls. I'm assuming that these are ones that you have either recorded or produced with your brother Dino over the years in the sound kitchen.
Yeah, St. Almost Fire, Kansas, Carmen, Petra. Um, a lot of St. Almost Fire. We That record sold about 8 million records. Was really successful. It was the one we did with David Foster.
Mm,
And they just sent me a new Kansas 4-pack, 4 platinum. So
that's
it's kind
pretty
of fun.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, awards, they're okay. I mean, they're fun to show off a little bit, but
Yeah, but you're not in it for awards. You're in it because,
yeah.
music's a passion for you. And, speaking of Kansas, you did the two records back in the early 80s, Vinyl Confessions and Drastic Measures. Take us back to that period of time. I know that you had tried out for the band after the lead singer was leaving, and you got the gig, and then you started going on tour with the band, and then ended up recording these couple records with them. What was that time period like for you?
They had just started a new record when Steve Walsh left the band, and it's a long story how I got the gig, but I ended up landing the gig. Unbeknownst to my wildest dreams, did I ever think that I would land that gig. Um, Steve Walsh, not easy shoes to fill. The guy's one of the best rock and roll singers ever.
Hmm.
And I did end up getting the gig, and we finished the record, Vinyl Confessions. We had a top 10 single on a Play the Game tonight, and the thing just started taking off. And next thing I knew, we were just out on the road, just playing every night, every other night. And just one thing led to another, and a lot of people ask me, well, what did it feel like, man? What was it like? And it's my answer to that is, I was too busy doing my job. I was too busy. I mean, I had to get enough sleep to be able to sing that stuff. I just had to be sharp as a tack, man, because those guys are concise, man. They're
Hmm.
precise musically. And, I couldn't step in and be the weak link. So I was so busy thinking about that, and, and keeping up, and, by being the new lead singer, that I didn't have time to know if I was enjoying it or not. Of course I was enjoying it, but I wasn't thinking about it much. Wow, this is cool, man. I think I'll call all my friends now. I didn't have to call them, they called me.
Well, yeah, Steve Walsh is a big voice to cover, but the one that I remember that most people associate with that band is Kerry Livgren. I mean, not only is he an amazing guitarist and a songwriter, but he's a multi-instrumentalist. I mean, he plays everything. And perfect proof of that is you hear the story about Carry On Wayward Son not originally even being on that record. It was a last minute addition. And of course, that's the biggest hit. That's the biggest song that they ever did, along with Dust in the Wind. What was it like for you going in those early days and going up and singing that iconic song, Carry On Wayward Son? I mean, what was that like filling shoes in that way and like going out on the road and tour every night singing such an iconic song?
Amazing. I mean, nothing short of amazing. I mean, believe it or not, Wayward Son was extremely popular, but it wasn't my favorite song to sing. Um, I used to love singing this song called "No One Together." That was on their Audio Visions record, I believe. That was my favorite song to sing because it had so many different parts. I mean, Wayward Son's it's an iconic song, but "No One Together" was just melodically, it just flowed all over the place. I loved it.
No, what was touring like back then? I mean, you obviously did a lot of tours on those two records. Can you remember any tours back then that you guys were a part of that you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here?
Yeah, we did a long tour with Cheap Trick, and then we did a very long tour with Heart. And when we toured with Heart, they like to do sometimes 14 nights in a row.
Mm,
I mean, my voice is pretty resilient, but 14 nights in a row is hard for anybody, even if you're singing correctly. Because everything else has to be working too. You got to be eating right. You got to be getting enough sleep, which never happened. You get done with the show at 11 o'clock, and by the time you finally get to bed and do meet and greets and all that, it's 1:30 in the morning.
mm.
And then you have a 5:30 lobby call for a flight with a connection to who knows where.
The next city, yeah.
It
You
was
know,
rough.
those two bands are an example of the resilience of how they sound now. And you know, you mentioned Heart and Cheap Trick. They're actually on tour this summer together. And I've seen both of them. Ann and Nancy Wilson still sound phenomenal. Robin Zander from Cheap Trick
Yeah,
still
he's
sounds
great.
phenomenal. I mean, it just goes to show you that, you know, doesn't matter how old you are, you can still go out there and just belt it out and still have it, which
Well, you
the
know what it is, man. People just like hearing the songs, you know.
yeah.
They just love hearing the songs that they grew up with and that they remember so well. Maybe that's why these tribute bands are getting so popular.
Well, speaking of going out and doing songs you like, you actually go out on the road still. Tell us about these shows that you're doing now, the artists that you're working with now. You got a lot of, besides the Jay Sekulow project that you do every once in a while, you're actually out on the road with some pretty familiar voices and names of music.
Yeah, the band that I play the most with, but um, well, there's a trend going on out there where everybody uses the same band, and there might be three or four, or sometimes as many as five featured artists. Like I'm trying to think of the last one I did. It was me, Fran Cosmo from Boston, Randall Hall, Leonard Skinner, John Schlitt was on that show, and I can't think of who else. And we all used the same band. And the name of that project is Voices of Rock Radio.
Mm.
Did a lot of shows with Voices of Rock Radio. There's a lot coming up this year. We did a lot last year. We probably did about 30 shows last year. Um, and then I'll sit in with other bands with you know, with like situation. You know, it's just a different band. Same featured singers. Might be Jason Sheff from Chicago. But you know, it's the same lineup with using, you know, where everybody uses the same band, and there's just different featured singers. That's become really popular because you can get a whole night worth of hit songs, where sometimes if you hire a band, nobody comes to mind, but you know, a band might have been popular, but they only had two hit songs.
Mm.
So you hear their two hit songs, and then you hear all their B-sides, you know what I mean?
You really gotta like a band to sit through all the B-sides and stuff like that. So let's focus on today. I mean, you've got obviously, you know, working in production and doing that stuff now. Uh, there are a lot of new bands now in both Christian music and mainstream music. Is there any bands now that, you know, you like in, you know, the Christian market and the mainstream market that, you know, are like, hey, I really like these guys. These guys really got something.
Um, Gosh, it's this one band that a Christian band that my wife listens to all the time. Something Kings.
Oh, for King and Country.
Yeah, I like that band. Love that
Yeah.
band. Um, I mean, every time I get in my wife's car, she's got the message on.
Mm.
It's a satellite station,
Yeah. Well, you
and
know, let your wife know that the guys from For King and Country have a film coming out called Unsung Hero. It comes out at the end of April, and it's
really.
basically the story behind them and their older sister Rebecca St. James and how they came over here from Australia with nothing,
Hmm.
and just the story behind the band. So if she likes For King and Country, which
She
I
does a
love
lot.
King and Country, it's a great movie. It's a faith-based film from the Irwin brothers coming out next
Yeah,
month.
you know,
So
I still like just the most recent thing I can think of is I went to see ELO 2 years ago
mm,
when Jeff Lynne put you know, well, Jeff Lynne was ELO,
mhm.
and I noticed yesterday that Jeff Lynne was coming back. He's doing another tour called Over and Out. I hope it's not his last one. I just love ELO, man. You know, the string arrangements and the songs, and so he's coming back on tour. And I just nabbed some tickets last night, pre-sale tickets.
Nice.
It's on my anniversary, October 11th, so it's gonna be nice.
Well, October 11th is my birthday. I'll be 44 in October, and you just celebrated your birthday a couple days ago. Happy birthday, belated
Thank
birthday.
you.
Yeah, so what are you doing nowadays? Are you is there going to be some more John Elefante music coming out, or are you working on anything that's going to be coming out this year?
Keeps bugging me to do a Mastodon record. So that's a possibility.
Your fan sites. I know that you are part of the fan sites and the Facebook groups and stuff, and Mastodon has been mentioned quite a lot, saying, I'd love to see John do another Mastodon record. And I like to see that too. I like the solo records, but yeah, I agree. I would love to see that.
We
So,
want to do a pretty hard rock Mastodon record. Almost all guitars. So if there's anything next on the docket, it's probably that.
awesome.
I just gotta get my head around it. I got so many shows coming up, and I can't think of just hitting the brakes right now and starting a record because it's sometimes hard to it's sometimes hard to be playing live a lot and making a record at the same time. But people do it, so it can be done.
Now okay, so you and your brother Dino did the Sound Kitchen for a long time, your own studio where you did a lot of production work. You worked on some of the Petra records in the 80s and stuff like that. Looking back to that, when you guys were doing that, you had to have bands come into the studio and be able to track the tracks for records live and do all that production work. When you look at stuff now, what are your thoughts on the recording processes now? Because I mean, you can literally record basically an entire record with your phone. I mean, would you have thought that like back when you guys were doing that stuff like hands-on in an actual studio? Do you ever think that you could record all of that on a small device like a cell phone?
No, no, I've never done one on a cell phone, but um, I've made records almost entirely myself here at my house. Of course, I can't cut drums here; that would be too loud. But a lot of drummers in Nashville have their own home studios that
Mm.
with their drums all mic'd up perfectly and EQ'd. So I'll send my files over to them. And for instance, Dan Needham's, who's John Schlute's son-in-law, is probably one of the best drummers I know. So I'll send my files over to him, and then we use this thing called audio movers, where just like you and I are talking about each other right now, I could let a guitar player play on my stuff, and I could be hearing it through my monitors in my room, and he's in Philadelphia.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And it's amazing. It's real time. It's exactly like you're in the room with him. I can hear everything he's doing. I could say, "Oh, Dave, try this, try that, try that," and it's amazing. I mean, it's really revolutionized things. But I regress by saying my favorite way to cut a record is having everybody in the studio at the same time.
Yeah, I was about to say that because I've talked to people that have recorded in the post-COVID era where everything is done in different places remotely, and then I've talked to people like you who recorded both ways, recorded in a studio, recorded in separate places, and a lot of them tend to go back and say, what, I like doing a live recording where everybody's in the studio together. You're tracking the stuff in real time together in a studio, and it's just something about being together doing that just
Well,
makes all the
when we
difference.
did Corridors and Defying Gravity, those two records were recorded with 7 or 8 guys in a studio at the same time. And what I liked about it was we'd start a song, for instance, and the guys would chart the song, and then we'd start banging it out. And if you wanted to change something, man, you could just do it like that. Let's make this bridge. Let's step it up a half key. Let's modulate it a half step. I mean, once you've got something already pre-programmed in a computer with all these overdubs on it and stuff, it's you can't turn it around that quickly. You almost have to start from scratch, and where a guy in the studio, my keyboard player might just do something really really cool, and I'll say, Jeff, what was that? What'd you do? And then what he's playing, you start using that like as the mainstay for whatever section of the song that was. And another thing you can't do, just when you're working by yourself, in a workstation in your house. So, those little caveats are big. They're very big.
That's pretty cool. I've noticed just a lot of change. Technology has just added so much more ability nowadays, but you can kind of lose that human factor when you're not there together. And I've noticed that being a trend in what people are saying when they're doing these studio recordings as compared to doing them remotely. So, but in closing, John, looking back, we all want to leave a legacy for family, for fans, for people that uh, love our music and what we do. When people look back on the name John Elefante and the work that you've done over the course of your career, what is it that you want the fans to remember you for the most when they think of John Elefante?
Well, that's pretty easy. I want to be remembered as somebody that maybe God used to help them either move closer to Christ or accept Christ, into their lives. Somebody that when they listened to, they were able to identify with spiritually, which in turn helps strengthen their walk with the Lord. I mean, that's what I want my legacy to be. I'm not doing this to make money anymore. I mean, you can make some income out on the road. I mean, that's where most bands are making their income. In fact, I was talking to Alice Cooper about this the other night. Well, 2 weeks ago when I was in Palm Desert, and he said something to me like, "What record company?" So all these guys are, they're making most of their money out on the road. And where was I going with that thought, Jay? Remember, I just had a birthday. I won't tell you how old no, yeah, so if I could rewind a little bit, that's what I want my legacy to be. I want to be known as somebody that didn't just throw a bunch of songs out there that were meaningless with lyrics that are not very long lasting. We've all heard songs like that. You might hear a decent song, but the lyric is just kind of okay. That's cool, but leaves no kind of impression on you. I get emails all the time, and I just love when I get these emails where people say how much my music, and it's not my music, it's my music that through that God has blessed me with. How much it's done in their lives, and there's nothing like receiving an email like that. It's like this person took the time to write me. Some of these emails are 3 pages long.
Hmm.
You know, about
That's
somebody that maybe heard me for the first time when they were in jail. I've gotten emails like that, and somebody gave them like a cassette in jail, and that's really the only thing they had to listen to, and how much of an influence it had on their life. And now I'm out of jail, and I'm still serving the Lord. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that when you get an
Mhm.
email like that.
Amen. That's got to make you feel good when you hear that. I mean, that's like kind of the pinnacle. Like you're not making this music to like so much make money or make it to make impact on people, and hearing stuff like that must make you feel good that the Lord's using you in that way.
I think, and to say today's society, Jay, I think there's a lack of people sharing, you know, positive things. And with me, it's the message of Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
It's, we don't do that as much as we used to. It's we keep to ourselves a little more. We're a little more guarded people. There's a big delineation in this, this party politically or that party. It seems like people have just kind of grown apart a little bit. There's not as much unity. I see the church shrinking. I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Yeah.
I'm constantly reading articles. They're usually clickbait, but they're interesting. Where is the Christian church gone?
Hmm.
Where are the Christian leaders? And it's it's somewhat true.
It is it's sad. It's sad but true. But we as believers and followers of Jesus, we just got to keep on keeping on. And some days that's hard, some days it's easy, some days we don't feel like we've gotten any kind of traction gained,
Yeah.
but we still do it because we serve the one that can do anything. And you know, I appreciate you coming on here today and just, you know, sharing these stories with us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, John. And I'm just praying that the Lord continues to use you in the ways that he sees fit in doing that. And, you know, I appreciate your heart. I appreciate your passion for music, and especially I appreciate your heart for reaching people for Jesus, man. That's awesome. And thank you so much for joining me today, man. It's always good to catch up with you, brother.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Jay, and I want to commend you for, I know you went through a very difficult time in your life,
Mm.
and it sounds like you made it through.
Yep.
And
Still work in progress, man. It's a battle every day, but God said he'd never leave or forsake us. And thank God he's here with me walking with this
and
walk every single day, brother.
and you're a testimony to that, and I appreciate it, man. Well,
I
it's good
appreciate
talking to you, Jay. You take care, man.